of the black and white in this image, right? And what it means and everything else, and the channels and stuff. So now there is a technique here that is called, I call it dodge and burn. This is another advanced technique that I learned on an advanced Photoshop class. So if you go in here, guys, you have dodge tool and burn tool. So you can go in here and say, okay, I want, I want to lighten up part of the image. And there it is. I lighten it up. I'm going to do Apple Z and you see it. You see? So I'm going to go in the layers. I'm going to unlock the background. Or you can go and say, okay, I want to use the burn tool. That means I'm going to darken up part of the image. And there we are. You darkened it up. So these tools are pretty simple. No big deal. One is to darken, one is to lighten. What happens if you do all this work of lightening and darkening, and instead of doing it like I do with Doodle, you say, hey, I want to just darken the roof, so I'm going to first select the roof, then do it, and then I want to lighten the column, so I'm going to select all the column and do it, blah, blah. So you spend a whole lot of time selecting pieces and going in and switching everything. Then you take it to your client, and your client says, oh, oops, it's just not working out for me. I think the columns are too light, the roof is too dark, the water is flat, it's not working out. What do? You have to start over. That takes you a whole lot of time. So what about finding a method that you actually can go and edit things? Just like we did with the layer mask, right? That you selected something, but you want to add or subtract of the selection. All your pixels were still there, and you could change them through the mask. So there's this technique that I use that is up here. One of your options is to use this new layer option. And under the mode, I want you to use overlay. And I'm going to suggest you have an opacity that is 75%. If you have full opacity, it's kind of too strong. In fact, we'll probably change the opacity up there anyway. And I want you to choose the box that says fill with overlay neutral color 50% gray. So what are you doing here? You're creating a brand new layer on top of your current layer that is originally filled with 50% gray. 50% gray means you're not lightening anything or you're not darkening anything. You're just putting all the midtones in there. You're leaving the midtones of the image as they are. You're leaving the image as they are and filling that layer with a gray that indicates that your midtones, that's what they are. You're basically saying, I'm leaving the image alone. All I'm doing is I'm adding a layer on top. There's going to be gray, and it's going to be an overlay on top of the current layer. That means it's going to let the thing through. Remember, when you use blend modes, means the layer below starts showing, right? So I'm going to say OK right now. So now I'm going to take black and white, and I'm going to take a brush. For example, if I want to lighten the columns right now, I need to paint with light, right? So I'm going to paint with white, and I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller. And I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to start painting. Whee, look how fancy that is. I don't know if you see it through the projector, but I sure lightened this thing up a whole lot. In fact, I lightened it up a little bit too much. So when you see that, what you might want to do, I'm going to do Apple Option Z. What you might want to do is when you see that it's too strong, when you lighten things and they're too strong, you might want to go in this opacity and say, hey, wait a minute, let's go at 60% or 75%, whatever it is, and try again. And you see that is a much gentler lightening it up. It means you're not lightening it up at full force, you're lightening up just a little bit. So you can go in there and say, okay, I want to lighten all the columns right here. Now notice what's happening in your little gray, layer there. You actually start seeing those white lines that are indication of the fact that you're lightening those areas. So you can go in and lighten all your column. Then you say, you know what? The water is really kind of washed out. So I'm going to hit X to paint with black. I'm going to get a bigger brush, square bracket, and I'm going to go in here and paint with black so that my water is getting a little bit darker right now. And sure enough, if you go and look here, now you start seeing that's reflected in here. And let's say you want to lighten up, this black area here. I'm going to hit X, and I'm going to try to lighten up a little bit the areas in the bottom that are so basically dark right here, etc., etc. Now remember, the more you go over, like if you feel like, the water should be darken a little bit more, you can, again, I'm going to hit X to paint with black, and the more you go over it, the darker it's getting, by the way. Once you're finished, you take it to your client, and the client says, oh, no, it's too dark, too light. First of all, you can turn it off. Look at the difference. What I was telling you earlier about my friend Jay, he brought me this beautiful image. Let me show you this image, because he was like totally amazed of when I turned it on and off is when he said, wow, I cannot believe you can do that. So he went to India this summer and took these photographs of India that were really, really nice. And I said, do you really want the eyes and the face of this guy so dark? He says, no, they're definitely too dark. They, got lost. So I went in and simply lightened up with this technique, the face, and went in, and actually I should have done more of the eyes. Went in and got the eyes a little bit lighter, and you basically, with just one simple layer, you can see what a difference you can make. So this technique to me is golden. It's the ability to change things without really changing them. Or later on, if the guy tells you you lightened up the water too much, if your client tells you that, you can always hit X to paint with white and go over the water and kind of paint. Now, we're too strong, so you want to definitely maybe lower the opacity, et cetera, but you can go in there, you say, okay, I want to just lighten it up just a little bit, not that much. So I'm going to put 10% in there. And then you can lighten this up. And as you can see, you are indeed lightening it up. So you can change everything you made by editing this layer, or you can turn it off and tell the client, hey, look, that's the difference. And generally, their jaws drops and says, wow, that's good job. They feel like they want to pat you on the back. And as I said, with Jay's image, I barely did anything because he's a purist. He doesn't want any color correction, except if it's indispensable. So when I went in there, and at first we had the image like this, and I said, it's a great image, but the face of the man totally gets lost. Do you want me to darken just that a little bit? And he said, okay, give it a try, but are you modifying permanently? I said, no, I'm doing something we can turn it on and off. And then while I was doing it, he was like totally amazed. Any questions, guys? All right, let me stop the recording for a sec.